Hey everybody, welcome to my first episode. I am going to call this podcast Going Down the Road with Randy. Going down the road was quite literally what we were doing on an almost daily basis, and going down the road is the topic of this podcast, which is recollections of traveling around the world in the early 90s in no particular order. But the name also fits in the metaphorical sense that life itself is going down a road. In any case, I like it. It's my podcast, so that's what I'm going to call it. So there. Also, this one was really hard. Maybe because it's the first one. Maybe it's just because writing a podcast is hard. Maybe I shouldn't even write the damn thing. It's also kind of long. But it bears bearing in mind that while I have a lot of ideas, I have been known to lack in the motivation department. So if anybody hears this podcast and likes it, let me know, and I may produce faster. I do have a wealth of material. I never had fans before, so that'd be kind of weird. Anyway, I want to dedicate this first episode to a couple of my friends and coworkers. You know who you are, C and K, and hopefully this will be come in just about an hour for your ride home. I'm thinking future ones might be 30 minutes, but we'll see. An important detail to remember is that these travel tales all occurred in the early 1990s, aka the dark ages, long before Wi-Fi, before the internet was anything anybody was aware of, and cell phones were only used by millionaire stockbrokers. People wrote letters, okay? We made expensive long-distance phone calls. Do you remember those? Yeah. So, bear that in mind. This particular tale occurred in November of 1991, and I'm describing our last couple of weeks in Sumatra, an island in northern Indonesia. Our path to Indonesia had taken us via a one-way ticket to Australia from Los Angeles, with long stopovers in Hawaii for 2 weeks and New Zealand for 3 months, which was the longest visa we could get for New Zealand. Our general goal while we were traveling was to stay in a country for the longest possible time. In Australia, we actually got a 3-month extension to the 6-month visa that they gave us on entry, which I might add is not easy to do, and that endeavor itself might rate a podcast of its own at some point. Anyway, at the time of this particular adventure, we had already been in Indonesia for about 6 weeks and only had about 2 weeks left on our 2-month visa. By the way, we were awarded a 2-month visa, 60 days actually to be precise, upon arrival in Indonesia on September 25th by showing that we carried $1,000 in cash or traveler's checks on our person. The only other way to get a 2-month visa is to have a ticket out of the country upon arrival. But when we flew into Indonesia, we had no real idea of our final itinerary and little chance of following one if we did have it. I remember I cashed in a $100 traveler's check for almost 200,000 Indonesian rupiah, 2,000 to the dollar. I felt rich. Anyway, part of the point of this podcast is the first of a long-planned series of responses to folks who said to me, "Man, you're so lucky to have traveled all those places." And I respond, nuh-uh. I can tell you right now, luck had absolutely nothing to do with it. I didn't win the lottery. I wasn't a trust fund baby. It was cold, hard work and saving, and ultimately, a lot of credit card debt. No, it wasn't luck. And it usually wasn't very much fun when it was happening. Not really. Maybe in a Zen kind of way. I mean, is Zen fun? Like, how much suffering can you endure before you burst into tears? Which actually happened on one Indonesian bus ride, so another story. The other point of these podcasts is that often there's no point, and they're more of a linear travel log with hopefully witty commentary and insights on the meaning of life along the way, and I hope you enjoy it. A lot of our style of traveling involved getting up before dawn to catch a godforsaken public bus on an interminable journey to the next best place to be. It also invariably involved alcohol and or whatever other mind-numbing condiments and concoctions we could get our hands on, as we weren't very accomplished at Zen Buddhism. So I might also point out that the single eternal truth of traveling is that you can spend a lot of money and go fast, or spend a little money and go slow. We really only flew once within Indonesia. And for those of you who are hearing this, there's a written asterisk here. The asterisk will be the subject of another story, which means that there were, in fact, 2 flights in Indonesia, but the first was moot time-wise and really didn't count due to extenuating circumstances, all of which to say, it's another story. Perhaps the next one. In any case, after selling the trusty VW camper van that we had driven across quite literally half of the continent and ultimately overstaying our welcome in Australia, we got the cheapest flight out of Darwin, Northern Territories, Australia, to the island of Timor, Indonesia. That flight is like an hour, maybe a bit more, and we landed in Southeast Asia for the very first time. Let me tell you, in 1991, there were not a whole lot of foreigners dropping into Nusa Tenggara, which is what the string of islands stretching east from Java 600 miles or so towards Papua New Guinea is called. They are also known as the Lesser Sunda Islands, by the way. In any case, maybe a dozen travelers a week, likely half that. And additionally, there was some political unrest when we landed in Kupang, West Timor, because at the time East Timor was fighting for independence against Indonesia's brutal occupation. I know my parents endured several weeks of uncertainty, as we were out of touch from the day we landed until arriving in Bali a few weeks later. And anyway, that's another story. See why I need a podcast? We had plenty of adventures as we made our way westward across Nusa Tenggara through Bali to Jakarta, and I expect to tell a few of them as we continue this series. But for now, I'm going to skip ahead and say it took us about 6 weeks to get to Jakarta. Our one Indonesian airline trip, aside from the other one that I said before didn't count, took us from Jakarta to Padang on the west coast of the island of Sumatra, flying on Garuda Airlines, the flagship airline of Indonesia. I will try, but it's going to be difficult to convey the absolute sheer beauty and unique culture of this part of northern and western Sumatra, since I struggle with verbal descriptions of landscape. I will do my best, and hopefully one day I'll learn how to actually do it. But for now, from Padang, Sumatra, our aim was to explore the area of western Sumatra near the village of Bukittinggi and Lake Menanjau. This is an area inhabited by the Minangkabau people. After Bukittinggi, we planned to cross the island of Sumatra from west to east, going to Lake Toba with the aim of exiting Indonesia by boat from Medan, Indonesia to Penang, Malaysia, after a quick jungle side trip to an orangutan preserve, and on somewhere near the last possible day that we're legally allowed to be in the country. By the way, feel free to follow on a map. It's kind of interesting. So the Minangkabau are the largest matrilineal society in the world, with property, family, name, and land passing down from mother to daughter. Most religious and political affairs are still the responsibility of men, although women also play an important role in some of these areas. So one of the things they do is they stage a bullfight in which 2 bulls actually fight each other. This occurs on a muddy field with lots of folks standing around intent on wagering on the contest. My journal entry for Saturday, November 9th, 1991, reads, "Soon we come to the bullfight arena, a large muddy field with stone walls on 2 sides. We pay our 500 rupiah, 25 cents, entry fee, and quickly realize that our fears that this is a stage for tourists only event were unfounded. This is obviously a big local attraction. Crowds are milling about, and there are 4 large water buffaloes staked out by ropes attached to rings through their noses. There's obvious betting going on, but I decide to watch a fight or two before becoming vested in the outcome. A couple of guys rope off an area of the field, 2 sides by the stone wall, 2 sides by ropes. The 2 bovine combatants are led into the center, and then they are at it, heads butting together, twisting for position, being egged on by their handlers. The bulls start off half-heartedly, pushing each other around. But it's not long before they start getting pissed off and begin snorting and really pushing in anger. Suddenly one bull backs off and runs away, and the other takes off in hot pursuit, and there's a bit of excitement as they meet at the apex of the stone walls. But all in all, this is great. No blood, no guts, just 2 bulls shoving each other around till one has had enough and runs away to live another day. My friend Phil and I make our way across the field to where the betting is going on. I put 5,000 rupiah, like $2.50 on a bull, and they lead 2 off to fight. But apparently, these guys are like best buddies or something. They don't want to fight, so all bets are off. I gotta say, I like the way they conduct their bullfights. We mill about the soggy field, keeping a sharp eye out for the occasional random wild bull careening about. 2 reserve bulls are led onto the field. I try to bet on the second one, but no one will take my money. I guess that means I picked the right one. Anyway, that fight isn't even as good as the first, and the one bull quickly chases the other one right over the stone fence. This is great fun. But soon that's it, and the crowd starts to disperse, and the buses start leaving. We ask around in the buses, but none are taking us until this one with 2 people on stops and picks us up. Turns out to be occupied by a rich Italian jewelry importer-exporter who has chartered it for the day and has stopped to offer us a lift for free. What luck. He takes us back to Bukittinggi and drops us off. I never even got the guy's name, but we did thank him profusely. We go to the 3 tables for a beer and then up to the Mona Lisa for some fantastic Chinese food for dinner. We have some more beers and then go back to the Sri Kandi, the hotel where we were staying, and read a bit before going to sleep. I will, from here on out, alternatively paraphrase and freestyle my journal entries from almost 30 years ago. God. Anyway, here's the next day, Sunday the 10th. A lazy day in the rain. Sad, really, now that my trusty pen has died. And I must note here there's a distinct change from what appears to be a blue ballpoint to some kind of black, maybe gel-type pen. Anyway, we have a late breakfast at Ling Ling Coffee Shop, and I ponder how every restaurant here calls itself a quote-unquote coffee shop, and thus alerts the tourists that there is Western food served there. Afterwards, we wander down to the Panorama Park and have a gander at the local Grand Canyon, which is quite nice, really. Most interesting bit was exploring the caves that were built by the Japanese, with local slave labor, of course, during the war. A surprisingly large and intricate array of parallel tunnels with many side vents and alternate entrances. We walk up to the museum through intermittent rain and learn that to enter the museum and pay, we must go past a zoo, of which the Lonely Planet guidebook states the best thing you could do for these animals would be to shoot them. We don't want to see that or support that, so we return to the Sri Kandi, the hotel we were staying at, to read and write. Monday, November 11th, journal reads. We have another breakfast at the conveniently located, and not so bad actually, pretty darn good really, Ling Ling's. And since it is such a rare, nice, sunny day for this time of year, my traveling companion and I have decided to rent a motorbike for our explorations. Our friends Phil and Karen are leery of motorcycles and opt instead for the local public buses, and thereby probably save a good day's budget. We change money and pick up a bike at 11 and get the rest of the day for 10,000 rupiah. That's a mere $5, but it's also the price of 2 nights lodging. We zoom off on our adventure, stopping for gas and directions outside of Bukit on our way to a town called Batu Sangkar, stopping every few kilometers for directions. We stop at a majestic overlook with an excellent panoramic view of the Harau Valley area. This is the Yosemite Valley of Indonesia, and I'm told it has since been developed into an off-the-beaten-track rock climbing area. Anyway, we don't stop for long in Batu Sangkar, but go to the extra 4 kilometers to Paguriong, where we visit the reconstructed palace of the Sultan. I'm probably saying that town's name wrong too, but it's a quite impressive house in the traditional and distinctive architecture. We honk at Phil and Karen coming in and pass them again coming out. Hey, we're ahead. We continue on our way to Balimbang to see the nearly 300-year-old traditional houses that people actually still live in. We're constantly stopping and asking for directions because the last directions we got were so shitty, and the roads keep getting smaller and smaller. On the outskirts of Balimbing, we stop at the roadside shop to drink tea and inadvertently collect a crowd of curious locals. It's the same old smile, nod, try to communicate, smile, drink, smile, repeat. I'm pretty sure this is what we're traveling for, as awkward and frustrating as it is much of the time. We continue slowly through the village to the house with the sign on it and go in for a look. A long single room with smaller bedrooms partitioned off. They ask us to spend the night, but we decline, instead leaving a donation and off again on our motorcycle down the very picturesque road to the village, where the road intersects the Padang Panjang Solok Road on the shores of Lake Singkarak. We feel so free. Turn left, turn right, it doesn't matter. Yeah, but no, it actually does matter because we have to turn right to get our asses back to Bukit. Anyway, there's a beautiful river flowing out of the lake, which turns a water wheel for irrigation of the nearby rice paddies. We have some water at the crossroads and eyeing the clouds to the north towards Padang Panjang, where we must return, and we try to get there as soon as we can. Unfortunately, it's only a few kilometers and we're hit with a downpour and are instantly drenched. This ain't your mama's rain. And I'm not talking bad about your mother, but this was a tropical monsoonal rain of the first order. It's somewhat like someone is pouring an infinite bucket of water over your head. We power on to Padang Panjang, where we stop for shelter and hot tea and hope this will soon blow over. The rain is amazingly persistent, and as it is getting late and Bukit is only 19 kilometers away, we decide to go for it. Only now, our motorcycle has other thoughts and won't start. It's wet. We wait a half hour or so to dry it out, and finally, miraculously, it starts. We motor slowly up the road against what appears to be a waterfall till we get about 3 kilometers out of the valley around Padang Panjang, and the rain stops. It's only raining down there. But now we have 16 bone-chilling kilometers back to Bukit, where we gladly return the motorbike, run back to the hotel to strip off sopping clothes, and jump into bed with a blanket up to our chins to thaw out. Note, there's no such thing as a hot shower or heater. Once you are cold, you wait until the sun comes out. Tuesday, November 12th. We sleep in and pack to catch the bus to Lake Meningjau at 1, which we reach about 2.5 hours later. The village, what we can see of it, is gorgeous, perched as it is on the edge of the lake. We check into a place called the Palantha Guest House, $250, 5,000 rupees, and have lunch across the street at its quote-unquote coffee house. Afterwards, Greta and I go down to the local hot springs for a bath. One perk of traveling within the so-called Ring of Fire is that you're usually not far from a geothermal hot pool of some kind or another. However, only I am allowed in, since it's apparently filled with men. It's fantastically warm, and I'm still cold from yesterday. and it has a nice sandy bottom. I feel bad for Greta, but selfish bastard that I apparently am, I don't let the feeling detract from my enjoyment of the lovely warm bath. I mean, what the hell am I supposed to do? Change the fucking world right here and now? I'm not going to argue and fuss, and honestly, Greta didn't either, but she wasn't a happy camper. To her credit, and for better or worse, she didn't make a big deal because it could have gone quite, possibly become ugly, and sometimes it's just daggone easier to abide by local social norms, being the foreigners that we were. Sometimes traveling is ugly that way too, though it always seems to be the women who pay the price. Our plans are that if the weather holds, we will stay until Thursday and then head out to Lake Toba. But when we go to book a bus for Thursday, we learn a bridge is out or something, and we can't go until Friday. Yeah, so apparently it only takes a day to repair a bridge around here, which kind of makes you wonder what the hell kind of bridge we're talking about. So anyway, we got an extra day. So Wednesday, November 13th, we indulge in another late sleep in and have breakfast. And then we rent bicycles for the rest of the day for 2,000 rupiah, $1. A lot cheaper than a motorcycle, but then again, I'm pedaling and it's not exactly flat. We're blessed with a beautiful day in western Sumatra, and we pedal through lush, verdant, and mostly flat rice paddies to the other side of Lake Mananjal. The people here are very open and friendly, and it seems we talk to everybody on our 28-kilometer circumnavigation of the lake. My journal reads, "We come back and go to the small village to see the funny black monkey." Now, I have no idea what that means, but I did not then and do not now have any special love for monkeys. Side note to 30-year-old self, take better fucking notes, asshole. I have no clue what that means. Oh, and sorry, pardon my French. I probably should have warned you that that might happen. I will try to find better words. Thursday, November 14th, we sleep in and prepare ourselves for the unknown journey ahead. We lounge around the hostel in the afternoon as the thunderstorm builds, and we wait for the bus to Bukittinggi. When we get there, we check back into the Sri Kandi, but the rooms are not as nice as the ones before. Almost like the proprietors knew that we were going and that we would only be back for a night. Friday, November 15th. This is the day of what I call the quintessential Indonesian bus ride, which is the heart of this story, so pay attention, damn it. The journal entry for the day of embarkation reads, "We have to get up early, by 7, catch our bus to Perpat at 7:30. We wonder, is this to be another Indonesian bus journey from hell? The first inkling of a problem is that the proper bus has broken down. Well, of course it has, since we only just bought the tickets, right? I mean, nothing was said about it then, right? Anyway, instead, they offer us a minibus, also known around here as a BMO, which will take 4 of us plus 2 others, so 6. The folks in our minivan were the already referenced without introduction Phil and Karen, a Welsh couple whom we met on September 25th on our flight into Timor from Darwin, Australia. From Timor, we had traveled with them for the last 6 weeks, the length of the Indonesian archipelago, really. The other couple, who we were already referenced without introduction, is Bridget and Rob, an English couple, and they kept us laughing with their humor and horror stories of travels in India, which was on our immediate itinerary after Thailand and maybe Vietnam. We had all been on bus rides throughout Indonesia and were too many to count, too varied in length, too much to endure. I'm convinced that in the very center of hell is a bus ride in Indonesia that just never ends. It just goes on and on and on and on. Anyway, all this history and the intestinal fortitude of our party would help sustain us for laying ahead. So I'm going to call this podcast episode just another Indonesian bus ride. But on this one, someone actually died. I truly apologize. I have absolutely nothing but shadowy recollections of the other 6 folks in the other van, which, in light of forthcoming events, was probably just as well. So anyway, since we're on a different bus and we're on 2 different BMOs now, we bargained the price down from the normal 20,000 rupees, $10, to 16,500 rupees. You do the math, but less than $20. Anyway, we go for it. We stopped by, pick up Rob and Bridget, and we're off on our way. Only a half hour behind schedule at 8 o'clock. Wait, schedule? Yeah, it's cute to think that there was a schedule. The bus seems to be quite comfortable, actually, though, for the 6 of us, and we start off feeling good. We're tooling through some very green, mountainous, and jungly countryside, and cloudy and wet, but not currently raining conditions. After a while, we come to the equator, which is a painted white line on the road, and I think there was a sign. We stop for obligatory photos and a few dozen back and forth jumps across the line on the pavement. Oh, what, the equator? Oh my, yes, I've crossed it dozens of times. Dozens? Really? Yes. No, seriously, dude, I counted. Anyway, we're off again. Back in the northern hemisphere for the first time since October 13th last year. Some 13 months or so. And that's when things start to happen, as they always do. The Indonesian Bus Ride Twilight Zone. No, it couldn't possibly be just another routine, grueling 13-hour bus ride through the mountains and jungles of northern Sumatra. No, of course not. It invariably happens several hours into an Indonesian bus ride in the middle of nowhere, and the ending is not foretold. Surprise! In this episode, police pull over our minivan and have a chat with the drivers. Remember, we're 2 minibuses, BMOs, each with 6 people. Some of the drivers start crying. Some are bursting into sobbing tears. We all look at each other. What the hell? This can't be good. As it happens, our minivan driver's son has been killed this morning in an accident just up the road. Killed. Dead. One of the cops squeezes onto our bus. We're to go to the next village, to the hospital. On the way, we pass the scene of the crash. One very smashed BMO and a bigger truck on its roof. It looks pretty ugly. The accident looks fresh. There's blood on the road. Looked like it was at least partially head-on. I'd often wondered how many Indonesian bus rides you have to take before the odds overtake you, and I began recalculating mine now. Our driver... Wait, our driver? Who's still driving? Oh my God, why is he still freaking driving? He turns around and tells us very matter-of-factly and in near-perfect English, "This is where my son died." I mean, it just took the wind out of us. We sat in the van taking turns staring at each other. Nobody knew what to say. So far, our driver has not shown any emotion, and we can't help but wonder when he's going to, crash, blow, I don't know what. We stop at a phone in the next village where he makes a call, and the other drivers take us down to an evil-looking and smelling hot spring. We're summoned back and continue on our way. Eventually, we get to the hospital, a very drab-looking building that no one in their right mind would want to be sick in. Outside is the ambulance, a white BMO with no life-saving equipment of any kind inside, but it has a hopeful red cross painted on the side of it outside. What is inside is the body of his son, so it's more of a hearse than an ambulance at this point. And honestly, I don't even know if where we were at was a hospital or a morgue. No way to know. Anyway, after inspecting the body, it is decided they will take it to their village. Off we go again, 3 minibuses now, 2 carrying 12 tourists to Prapat, and 1 taking a boy home. It takes a couple of hours to reach the village. I mean, I know it's selfish, but I am thankful that it's on our way. I mean, what the fuck is wrong with me? I mean, all things being equal, it's better they're going our way, right? I mean, I'd go any which way, like I had a choice. But I already had doubts about where and how this particular journey was going to end. Anyway, we finally get there and pull off at a nondescript group of houses where we all pile in for tea, which looks a lot like water, and then they unload the body. Huge crowd of people had materialized from where, I don't know, and we're all jostling for a look. Cursory one for the body, and then a more sustained stare at the 12 white tourists drinking tea in the middle of the whole damn thing. They carry the body right in front of us into the next house and bring back the empty stretcher and some very bloody sheets and load it into the ambulance/hearse, and it drives off. Then a wailing commences from the house next door, and ungodly shrieking, not meant for mortal ears. And we abandon any pretended desire for tea and retreat to a shelter across the road, almost out of earshot, but not quite. All I can say is primal, absolutely primal. It seemed like we were stuck in time while we were there. And when I remember this bus ride, I always hear those wails. Our original driver, the father of the deceased young man, will stay here, of course. So while we wait for a replacement driver, we go into town for lunch. By now it's almost 5 o'clock, and we still have 7 hours to per pot, so more than halfway, or less than halfway. However, we're soon on our way again, shaking our heads at what a small, brief world we live in, and hoping in the back of our mind that our BMO wasn't next. We drive. Soon it gets dark, as it often does at the end of the damn day in these latitudes. I doze off. When I wake, it's foggy and rainy and dark, and we're just creeping up a really creepy, dark mountain road. And if this was the eastern U.S., you'd say you were hearing banjos. Did I mention it was creepy and dark? We were apparently way past Saboga, and there were perhaps 5 hours to go. Had I only dozed for 2 hours? It seemed like more. We stopped for dinner, some lonely little restaurant, and make a fateful decision: start drinking. As in the old saying, when the going gets tough, the tough start drinking. I just made that up. Plus, the sun had definitely gone way past the yard arm, and we just wanted a drink, damn it. By the time we leave, the fog has lifted, but the rain has increased, so we make sure to pack some supplies of beer for the road ahead. Our driver takes the lead of our 2 BMO caravan, and we're off. We drive and drive and drive. And finally we realize the other van isn't behind us. How long have they been behind us? How the hell do I know? I was about half drunk at this point. I mean, I'm leaving it to these supposedly professional drivers' hands to be able to stay together. I mean, I'm just saying, was I supposed to be keeping track of that? Because, yeah, well, I wouldn't. Anyway, we stop at a really lonely and pathetic truck stop to wait for him to catch up. Our driver, Herman, promptly falls asleep as it is now like 10 o'clock at night. In retrospect, he showed his professionalism here by quickly using the opportunity to sleep, a better option for a driver than the other option, which was drinking. Though the rest of us hunkered down under the shed in the truck stop and commenced drinking heavily. It just seemed like our best option at the time. Our ultimate plan, if we had one, is that the intoxicated us would be better able to keep tired Herman awake to drive. And much to the dismay of the few remaining patrons, we bought all of the beer they had left. All 7 bottles. 1-liter bottles of Bintang beer. Plus a bottle of the local fire water a medicinal concoction that they called komput, which may or may not have been made from bananas. I'm not entirely sure. Anyway, it was a good 20% alcohol. Eventually, a car stops to tell us the other bus is broken down somewhere behind us and we have to go back. It's only a few kilometers, and we find they have stopped in a much larger truck stop. Now, just to be clear, when I say truck stop, I'm talking about a shelter of some sort in a wide spot in the road, with or without walls made of bamboo and palm thatch. The other folks have a problem with the fan belt. I'm not sure if it's loose or broken, and truthfully, I am at this point too drunk to really care. Besides, 2 of the 6 have already jumped on a truck going to Prapat for an extra 5,000 rupees, and they're way ahead of us. Yeah, that's a thing. That's a traveling thing. Anyway, one of the 6 has simply walked off somewhere into the foggy, dark jungle, probably drunk, most likely. And the other 3 have resigned themselves to sleeping in their minibus and resuming when and if repairs were made. I took a look at the fan belt, but there's no right size belt, so wishing them luck, we decide to press on alone. First, we pee. It is worth mentioning that the toilet was rushing with water underneath, presumably from the recent and continuing rains. The toilet itself resembles a horse race starting gate with 4 little half walls and 4 half doors. This design concept seems to be common here in northern Sumatra, which makes peeing in private, especially for the ladies, something of a chore. As soon as a white person steps in to pee, a crowd of locals, usually children, crowd in to peer over the walls at the spectacle. Anyway, back on the BMO, we go on into the blackness, fortified with more beer, and we crack open the komput, and we're talking and laughing loudly. We don't want Herman to fall asleep on us in the rain and on these twisting roads. It is now past midnight, and he has been driving since we left this morning at 7. He claims he's not tired. We drive on into the next day. Saturday, November 16th. So singing and laughing, we finally pull into some godforsaken village, which was supposed to be only 2 hours from Prapat. What did we just experience? Some weird kind of reverse wormhole? I don't know. It's now 3 o'clock in the damn morning. We stop at a restaurant that is amazingly still open. We get some water. We have plenty of alcohol, but we gotta hydrate. We need water. Relieving our pent-up bladders was a great adventure. Why is it that relieving bodily functions almost always leads to a mostly unwanted cultural exchange? It is pitch black, and there are 3 very large pigs on the opposite side of a very flimsy-feeling bamboo fence deck thing that we're standing on. And honestly, in our current state of sleep deprivation, drunkenness, and absolute blackness, it's hard to tell what we were standing on, but we were keenly aware of the pigs below, who are clearly excited by our pissing on them. I don't know what got them all excited. We can't see a thing, but we can hear the pigs, and I keep wondering if the structure we're on will collapse into them, and I must just be drunk, right? In any case, it seemed hilarious at the time in our state. And actually, this reminds me of another story involving pigs and defecation in the Golden Triangle in Thailand that I might have to tell you about later. Anyway, we forbid Herman to continue driving, and we're far too intoxicated to keep him awake. We all go back and pass out in the minibus to the best of our abilities. Anyway, I do remember barfing in the street. I'm pretty sure that was before we crashed in the van. And the next thing I know, we're pulling into Prapat at about 7:30, just under 24 hours after we left, for what was supposed to be a 13-hour bus ride. In my ever-increasing experience, this was pretty typical for Indonesia, at least in the early 90s. We feel like death. And there's no way in hell we're going to be going to Medan today. So we decided to hang around until the first ferry to Sumatra Island on the other side of Lake Toba. The boat leaves at 9:30. Everyone goes to breakfast while I keep watch over the baggage and simultaneously try to sleep in the van. Greta brings me back a delicious ham and egg sandwich and chips, and I contentedly munch away as Herman drives us all down to the dock. And here we go again. The ferry fare. Depending on spelling and context, that could mean almost anything. Anyway, our ferry boat fare was supposed to be included in our bus fare, but this really annoying guy with a hairy mole who works for the bus company makes up some lame excuse for not buying our ticket, which earns him a well-deserved tongue lashing from the tag-teaming and somewhat excitable Bridget and Rob. At this point, I could care less, and we pay the extra, I don't even know how much, but less than $1 ferry ticket. To this day, I'm certain that Rob and Bridget think less of us as travelers after capitulating so easily, but I feel you gotta pick your battles, and I just wasn't up to this particular one. Ferry chugs across picturesque Lake Toba, which is actually the water-filled caldera of a hopefully long-dormant volcano. And 45 minutes later, we get off and go up the hill to the Mafia guest house, which offers us a nice big room, comfy bed, 5,000 rupees, $2.50. Count me in. I'm out like a light. I drop off some dirty laundry and wake up at like 4:30 that afternoon. Sunday, November 17th. I'm still tired when the alarm goes off at 9, but we must get the 11 o'clock boat to Prapat so we can catch a bus to Medan today and still arrive in daylight. This is known as traveling logistics. So we pack up, have a quick breakfast, rush off to get the ferry, which we almost miss because Greta is bargaining for weavings. Again. I mean, what the hell are we going to do with all these weavings? Anyway, we catch the boat on time, and then we endure the hot, cramped 4-hour ride to Medan. 3,500 rupiah. You figure out the dollars. One is 2,000. It's hot, it's cramped, but it's cheap, and we arrive before 5 in what my journal entry describes as quote-unquote reasonable condition. On the way here, we had passed the first rubber tree plantations I had yet seen. They stretched for miles. In Medan, we're immediately surrounded by the usual horde of screaming Baymo and taxi drivers all clamoring to rip us off for a ride into town. My advice to the intrepid traveler in a similar situation is to retreat into your inner self and wait it out. It won't be long, trust me. Their patience is always less than yours, and if you do not engage, they will swarm the next unsuspecting target. This is the mantra, and is always true for a patient budget traveler. It takes a while, but we eventually get a ride into town for 500 rupiah, 25 cents. I know, why bother bargaining? But we feel it's important to others traveling behind us so that they're not ripped off either. Our ride drops us off somewhere. I don't know. Anyway, we go to look at hotels, and the closest one is 10,000 rupees, and it has stinky Mandy water, an automatic disqualification. A Mandy, by the way, is the generic term for a large, usually concrete basin of water in the bathroom, which is used for all bathroom and bathing purposes, and is ubiquitous across Indonesia. There's a plastic dipping container which you use to flush the squat toilet and to pour over yourself to bathe. There's no separate shower or bathing area. The water just runs out a drain in the floor of the bathroom, or Mandy room if you prefer. The water is room temperature or cooler, and feels good most of the time. After 6 weeks in Indonesia, we were unfazed by such things, but I remember those first few puzzled days when going to the bathroom, nobody told us. There weren't no instructions. It's like, no, oh, wait, let me Google this. So we end up spurting $15,000 for a hotel. $15,000. Because there are some limits to our personal hygiene. Plus, it includes breakfast, and we're only here for the night. Monday, November 18th. Greta wakes in a foul mood for some damn reason, and we begin the day with a nasty argument. This is a bit unfortunate, as we have some housekeeping items to take care of, like booking tickets out of the country by the end of the week. Anyway, we spend the morning cruising around Medan by Becak. A Becak is a bicycle rickshaw, sometimes with a two-person car in front of the driver, sometimes behind. Actually, he's both a peddler and a driver. So we go to the tourist office, the bank, the post office, travel agent, the ubiquitous PT Pakto, to book our boat to Penang, Malaysia. We have decided to leave on Friday. Boat all booked. We get lunch and then go looking for the bus to Bukit Lawang. We're going to go see the orangutans. Yippee! Bukit Lawang is the jumping off point to the Bahoruk Orangutan Station. Fun fact, orangutan is the Indonesian word for forest, and utan means person. So an orangutan is literally a person of the forest. So the Bahoruk Station is inside Gunung Lusur National Park, and it's a project of the World Wildlife Fund. The national park is 9,000 square kilometers of tropical rainforest and jungle. At Bahoruk, they have been reintroducing captive orangutans back to the forest since 1973 using a 3-stage process. First, quarantine and cage life, then first forest life, where they live in the forest but they're still offered food every day. In the 3rd stage, they are deemed ready for free forest life, and they are set free deep inside the park. Visitors are allowed to watch the feedings during the 2nd phase. Getting to Bukit Lawang involves getting a public bus to Timor Taxi Station and then another bus to Binjai, where we can catch a minibus to Bukit Lawang. The public buses are, of course, crowded as hell, and we don't make it any better when we get on with our giant backpacks. They basically kick us off the bus before we get to the Timor Taxi Station, so we find another to take us to Binjai. Once there, we pile onto the minibus to Bukit Lawang and sweat until the bus finally starts rolling. Oh, but it doesn't roll for long. The right rear tire has a leak 100 yards down the damn road. They change it for one of the baldest tires I've ever seen. It looks like a big black condom wrapped around a steel rim. We make it to the next village, where we stop and get the tire fixed at one of the many little roadside tire repair places that say vulcanizing. They take the condom tire off and put the newly repaired tire back on, and it looks like it's going to be another typical Indonesian bus ride. This premonition is confirmed when the newly repaired tire blows out a few kilometers down the road. The condom tire is pressed back into service, and off we go again, wondering what in the hell next. I'm expecting a massive blowout any second. I have no backrest on my seat. I'm squashed in a little tiny seat with 3 other people. Miraculously, the tire doesn't explode, but it does rain. I just look out the window and enjoy the scenery, which consists of alternating rubber tree and palm oil plantations. We arrive in Bukit Lawang just after 5, with just enough time to get our permits for tomorrow's orangutan feeding and sort out a place to stay in this beautiful, delightfully cheap and mellow village on the edge of the jungle. The village is built along both sides of the Bahoruk River, a lively mountain stream currently engorged with monsoon rain. Side note, flash flood hit Bukit Lawang on November 2nd, 2003. November is monsoon time. Described by witnesses as a tidal wave, the water was approximately 20 meters, over 60 feet high, as it came crashing down the hills, wiping out everything in its path. The disaster, which was the result of illegal logging, destroyed the local tourist resorts and had a devastating impact on the local tourism industry. 400 houses, 3 mosques, 8 bridges, 280 kiosks and food stalls, 35 inns and guest houses were destroyed by the flood, and 239 people, 5 of them tourists, were killed. 1,400 locals lost their home. After 8 months of rebuilding, Bukit Lawang was reopened again in July of 2004. Anyway, we finally settled on a place called the Wisma Bukit Lawang Indah, where we enjoy a large room for 2,500 rupiah. And if you are counting along, that is $1.25 for a hotel. We unpack in the middle of a huge sudden rainstorm. Tuesday, November 19th. We get up early to see the morning orangutan feeding at 8. I can see that we will have at least one roll of film with nothing but orangutans on it. Remember, this is 1991. There's no such thing as digital cameras. We're using slide film, and when it is exposed, we send a load back to the U.S., where we will finally get them all developed when we get back. I think it costs us about $500 to get all those rolls developed. Side note, I'm proud of a picture that I took of a female orangutan and her baby that has been published in my father's biochemistry textbook since the first edition. If you're interested, you can check out Garrett and Grisham Biochemistry. The orangutans are amazing. Absolutely amazing. We're led to a little platform in the jungle, and as we stand around, the station employees deposit mashed bananas and milk on the platform, and the orangutans come swinging through the trees to get it. The intent is to keep their diet bland and somewhat sparse to encourage them to forage on their own. One poor fella spends his time eating the bananas and the milk and throwing it up and eating it again and throwing it up, eating it again. He quite obviously has an eating disorder that he needs to work through. You see a weird bee carrying a leaf and hear the calls of hornbills and gibbons. Phil and Karen say they're moving upstream to the jungle inn. It'd be nice to be up closer to the park and the feedings, but I honestly can't be bothered to move. Weird, huh? I mean, that's literally all we do is move at a moment's notice. I guess, given a choice sometimes, it's nice to settle for a few days. We eat breakfast at a place called Usman's and to have those yummy potato cakes again. And then we want to watch the video at 1 and see the afternoon feeding at 3. We were bad last night and forgot to take our malaria pills. I hate those damn things. It makes my hair fall out. We take a little nap, go see the video at 1. Greta's not feeling well. The video is quite interesting, but it makes me sad. Apparently there's 4 orangutans in the zoo in Bukit Tinggi that they refused to surrender for rehabilitation. Shitheads. We go for the afternoon feeding, but only one orangutan shows up. Station folks say this is good. It means that the others are out foraging on their own. We book a jungle trek with the Park Service tomorrow. There are only 10,000 orangutans in the wild, and 2,000 of them are here. We get dinner and make it an early night, so we'll be fresh for trekking tomorrow. Maybe we'll see a tiger. If we do, will the tiger see us too? Wednesday, November 20th. We wake early. Greta's still not feeling well and decides not to go trekking. I meet Phil and Karen. We have a quick breakfast and scurry up the trail. The feeding this morning is dominated by a large wild male who intimidated all the others. He chased one guy who got so scared he fell out of his tree and rolled down the hill. We meet Adi Suharto, our nature guide. We enter the jungle and walk the way. Along the way, he pointed out various plants, wild ginger, mahogany trees, etc. We walk along ridge tops till the late morning, and then drop down to a stream in a deep, narrow canyon for a lunch of nasi goreng, fried rice with a fried egg on top. This was wrapped in a braided palm leaves. Phil went swimming, but I didn't because I had watched 2 leeches come near me while we were eating lunch. Afterwards, we went swinging Tarzan-like through the vines. We climb out of the canyon to the ridge again, and then descend again and make the choice to continue down the main river, which we would have to cross twice rather than continue to go up and down, up and down, up and down. Halfway down the river, we see long-tailed macaques and a small black squirrel. And, of course, it rains. We reach the river and run across while being swept downstream. A short while later, we do it again, and then, boom, we're back at the station where we check each other for leeches. I went back. Greta was still not feeling well. I joined her for a short nap, had a Monday, then dinner. Tomorrow, we're going to tube the river. Tuesday, November 21st. We get up for the morning feeding. It's a good one. We counted 4 females with children. Lots of activity. Afterwards, we had breakfast in the Jungle Inn and then rented some tubes. And the 4 of us went flying down the river in them. I mean, that was a blast. It's the middle of the monsoon season, so there's a lot of fast water. Karen fell off our tube once, and everyone chickened out on the final set of rapids, so I did it myself. Greta said once was enough for her, so I carried her tube up and turned it in. Phil, Karen, and I went for another run, and this time at the top, I drove the little ferry canoe thing across the river. What fun. Even more fun was me flipping over backwards on my tube this time. It wasn't as much fun bouncing off rocks in the river trying to get back in my tube, but still, I wish we could go on the 2-hour trip downriver. Unfortunately, we have to get back, pack up, get a minivan back to Binjai, which we do after a final lunch at Yasmin's. Pack ourselves and like a dozen others into the bus. It's quite amazing what these things can hold. And 2 hours later, we're in Binjai, and we get on the public bus to Medan, and the shitheads charge us extra for our backpacks, because they can. In Medan, we get an expensive taxi back to the Delhi Raya for 4,000 rupees, $2. But I get to talk to the dispatcher on the radio. Damn taxi cost almost as much as our hotel room for a night in Bukit Friday, November 22nd. Our last day in Indonesia. We're up early. We meet Rambo, the radical Chinese-hating Baychek driver we ran into last night. It takes us down to PT Pacto, where of course we wait hours for the bus, which finally shows up and takes us to the port. It is a nice bus, though, and there does seem to be an actual capable-looking boat at the dock, so this might not be so bad. It takes about an hour and a half to check in, go through immigration and general waiting around till we board the sleek and shiny craft, which will carry us across the Straits of Malacca from Sumatra, Indonesia to Penang, Malaysia. The fare was 6,700 rupees, less than $4. It's quite posh and comfortable inside, actually, and we get seats up front by the bar and settle in to watch the karaoke and music videos. The boat is fast, but the bar, as is common in Muslim countries, is misleading, as it doesn't actually serve beer or any other real food, mostly snacks. The front of the boat soon bouncing around like a wild horse, and Greta and Karen head aft seeking calmer conditions, leaving Phil and I to watch the backs and 2 videos, Renegades and Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, by ourselves. A mere 4.5 hours later, we disembark at the port of Penang, go through immigration, and we get a 3-month visa for Malaysia, which is actually one of the few places we don't intend to use that amount of time. For some unknown reason, the immigration authorities only give Phil and Karen 2 months. Undoubtedly, it is some backhanded reflection on past centuries of British colonial rule here. Penang is a bustling little metropolis, and I splurge and buy a USA Today and a Time magazine. Cal Ripken got World Series MVP. Magic Johnson has AIDS, and the daggone Redskins are 11-0.